What's up, folks? Vinny here from Happily Running and the Trails Collective community. Coming to you somewhere on the side of the road, crewing for a woman named Vanessa Reiser, who is running from Oswego to New York City to raise some money for domestic violence and some awareness around it as well. It's a pretty great story, so if you can, check it out. Also wanted to let you all know that Happily Running is now proud to be the directors of the Beast of Burden event in Lockport, New York. Registration for the summer event on July 31st is open now. No, it's a tight turnaround, but it's a race that's been on a lot of people's calendars, and I think the old RDs were just trying to figure out what to do, and we talked with them a little bit, and we're able to come up with a great plan to get us in there and help that event stay live. So if you're looking for something to do midsummer on an amazing towpath, running 25, 50, or 100 miles, head over to UltraSignUp and you'll find that registration there now. So enough of me. I gotta get it back to Vanessa, who's just about coming up over that hill. Ian, let's hear that rundown.
So Ian here, coming at you with a weekly rundown for the Trails Collective community, covering what's been shaken in the Northeast trail running world for the week ending May 28th, 2021. So this episode, I'm going to be a little bit light on the editing and images that I'm weaving in. For me, this is another race production week. I'm putting on the Cayuga Trails 50s, as well as Lucifer's Crossing 10K here in Ithaca this Saturday. Pretty stoked. Looks like we should have a pretty beautiful day for it really on Saturday. Some heavy rains coming in this week, but it should clear by Saturday, and the trail's been so dry that I think it'll be all right. So I'll still try to cover some of the information, and I wasn't able to dig in too deep onto some of the results, and I didn't get a couple of the clips back, so we'll be a little bit light there, but let's get into it anyway. All right, so in the media, two things that caught my attention this week. I think the underlying theme here of the week is that cold is bad. And the one that probably got the world's attention to a certain extent was the 100K deaths in China. It looks like a beautiful course in China. Race has been going on for a while. Some pretty seasoned runners in the mix, and just an unfortunate situation where some extreme weather came in mid-race. I think it was something like 20 miles maybe into the race. And 21 runners, I believe, ended up dying in the context of or in the course of the event. And yeah, so pretty tragic, pretty traumatic. I think probably hits home quite a bit for a lot of us who run trail and ultras. There was an individual in one of the connected articles, a sheep herder named, and I probably won't pronounce it right, but Zhu Kemming, who saved 6 runners by bringing them into his cave, building fires and slowly warming them up. So amidst all of that, amazing that another individual was able to save lives in the context of the event. So definitely a terrible and tragic event in the trail and ultra community. And yeah. Next one on the cold and icing front. Is another article basically on the case against icing. And this is one I've been long, I think, dubious of using ice to respond to or treat injuries. Yes, it slows inflammation down, but it also just messes with the body's natural inflammation pathways, which are very evolved and calculated to do the job very effectively. So the New York Times, very effective in grabbing clickbait style articles, especially in the sporting world, as well as actually niche running world, put this one out, but they were talking about one of the latest studies making a case against icing. So I'll plug the link eventually in the website version of the Trails Collective Rundown. Website, my web developers have been a little AWOL, so some of the updates in some of the changes that happened in WordPress, I'm missing some of the articles lately because I'm waiting for a piece of that. In any case, you can check it out, New York Times, the case against icing. All right, registrations opening. One that was mentioned at the outset was Vinny with Beast of Burden. Looking at the UltraSignUp Hotlist, the Firebird Trail races in Windham, Maine, slated for September 18th, are 92% full in both the 50K and 13 miler. Run Amok 50K in Brownsville, Vermont, set for October 17th, is also 92% full. The Night Train 50K and half, scheduled for June 26th in Farmville, Virginia, is 98% full. The First State Trail Races 50K, slated for the June 12th in Wilmington, Delaware, is approaching the warning track at 87% full. The 10K and 25K there are already capped out. The Half Sour, Half Kraut, another uber endurance event, as well as the Sproul 10K. I think the Sproul 10K, one of Lipsy's favorites down there in PA, are both pushing the track at 85%. The Catamount Ultras 25K in Stowe, Vermont, slated for June 26th, is about to cap with 9 spots remaining. The 50K option is still in safe territory. Let's see, the Eastern Divide 50K, slated for June 19th in Pembroke, Virginia, has only 1 spot remaining. Who's going to get that lucky golden ticket? Nipmuc South Trail Race, scheduled for June 13th in Mansfield, Connecticut, has 12 spots remaining. Actually, I think that was last week as of filming. They may have capped because I didn't see it this week. Yeah, so that's what's coming up. Let's see, registrations opening in New York. The Newtown Half, running September 19th in Elmira, New York, will open this week on May 27th. And the Twisted Branch 100K on June 1st. I'm not quite sure of the status of Twisted Branch, whether they were rollover entrants already in that field that will pretty much immediately have that field capped, or whether they were refunded last year. In any case, Twisted Branch 100K, wonderful event here in New York, Western States qualifier, and both of those put together. It's one that also fills really quickly, so that's opening here on June 1st. If you're interested in PA, Run the Park 5K in Johnstown will open on May 29th. And Taya Dalton, I think, opens mid-June. In New Jersey, the Squatchy Leftovers in Mountainside, New Jersey, as well as the Batona Trail races in Ongs Hat, New Jersey, or Ongs Hat, as well as Christmas in the Pines Trail Run in Beechwood, both open on June 1st. In Virginia, the Iron Mountain 16, 30, and 40 milers running September 4th in Damascus, Virginia, and the Nasty 4 and 9 milers in Lexington, as well as the Gritty Leaks Trail Marathon. I might have said Gritty Lakes. Maybe that was my spelling bad. I'm not sure. Trail Marathon in Goochland, Virginia, will open on June 1st. All right, some FKTs of the week. Connecticut, Sarah Ports Connor, an FKT frequent flyer, 56 minutes 18 seconds for the portion of the Tunxus Trails. Massachusetts, Rufus Shaffey and Brenda Fortin, 5 hours 57 minutes for the long Seven Sisters 22. In Maine, Matthew Walker, 1 hour 7 minutes for the West Side Trail. In New Jersey, Brittany Colmer, 23 minutes 13 seconds for the Johnson Park Trail. In New York, William Connell, 10 hours 51 minutes for the Suffern Bear Mountain Trail. That one's gotten quite a bit of action, I think, over the past year and a half. Bethany Gerritsen, 4 hours 32 minutes for the Adirondacks Gray, Skylight, and Marcy Circuit, one that has also seen some good performances. Brendan Connell, 3 hours 22 minutes for the Long Island Greenbelt Trail. And Angela Legg and Matthew Spinali, 2 hours 23 minutes for the Hunter Mountain Loop. All right, in Rhode Island, 2 in the mix this week. Matthew Walker, 58 minutes 37 seconds for the Arcadia Mount Tom Trail. And Justin Martino Harms, 19 hours 11 minutes for the North-South Trail. In Vermont, Jesse Donovan, 6 hours 1 minute for the Monroe Skyline Gap to Gap to Gap. And multi-states, Benjamin Herron and Mitch Morris, 1 hour 59 minutes for the Tri-State Tri-Mountain Loop through New York, Connecticut, and Massachusetts. And Josie Vitale, 2 days, 5 hours 30 minutes for the Great Allegheny Passage through Maryland and PA. There were a few events that ran this past weekend in terms of the results front. The Infinitus in Brandon, Vermont, 8 mile, 26.2 miles, and 88K. Started, I think it's started in motion this week, but not, I think not quite finished. I forget how that goes. There might be an even longer one. One of the PA originals, Rothrock, was back in the mix. It ran this past weekend. I'm really hoping, actually this one came in. We got a clip from Miquela Ingalls, I believe back newer to the area, who had a really great run at Rothrock. So Miquela, cue us into Rothrock.
Hi, so I am Miquela Ingalls. I'm a geology professor at Penn State and also a trail runner. So I'm going to be giving you the race recap from the Rothrock Challenge that happened this past Sunday. So just a little background on me. I've been running since I was 12 years old, but really got into trail and ultras when I lived in Boulder for a while a few years ago, and then moved to Southern California and got into the trail racing community in both Southern and Northern California, and then moved here last year. And so it's been really fun getting to know the Northeastern running community, particularly with Rothrock in my backyard. So I ran the Tussey Mountain Back 50 mile last fall, and that was amazing. But Rothrock Challenge was a totally different beast. So it's a about 17-mile race with about 4,000 feet of elevation gain, with maybe a third of that in the first mile or two. There's some really intense climbs in this race. It's called the Rothrock Challenge for a reason. So there's essentially no switchbacks. You're going up and over these ridges as straight of a route as possible. So a lot of power hiking. It was a pretty hot day, so on the first climb, everyone was slowing down. I was questioning whether I was going to be able to safely finish, just based on how hot I was, but of course kept powering through. After the first big climb up to the fire tower, you have a really fun descent on New Laurel Run Trail that sort of like snakes its way down. It is pretty smooth, which is unusual for this course. Then you shoot back up to the Mid-State Trail, which is just basically a pile of rocks, so you're picking your way across. But I ran with a few guys up there. That was really fun. The next descent after about a mile on the Mid-State Trail is straight down. I think a lot of people took spills there, but it's pretty fun downhill. And then you're on the Sand Spring Trail for a couple miles, and then there's this juncture where you're heading over to the Shingletown Gap area. And so the race was heavily flagged, so it was marked with orange tape what was on course. But at this one juncture where you either could cross the creek or turn left, if you crossed the creek, you were actually cutting off like several miles of the trail. But there weren't arrows, so I think a lot of people took a wrong turn there. Ended up really off course in the sense of they like skipped a bunch of it. So that really messed some people up, but I fortunately turned left and headed on the right part of the course. And you're next to a creek for a few miles before heading up to what's called the Cliffs of Insanity. So you shoot up another ridge, run along the ridge for a little bit, and then you sort of have to scramble down this like really steep gap in the mountain ridge, Shingletown Gap. Steep enough at some points that you're using ropes to get down. So there was another aid station at the bottom. It was awesome. There were kids that had water guns, so that was much needed and appreciated at that point in the day. And then once you get across Shingletown Gap, there are people flagging you to essentially make a left, and then you just head straight up another cliff, so the vertical portion of the Cliffs of Insanity. So you're really, it's your hands and knees type crawling for a little bit, trying to scramble your way up these rocks, which is like kind of a cool part of a trail race. You do that for 15 minutes or something, and then you're along Bald Knob Ridge. You run Bald Knob Ridge for a while, and then at that point it's like almost all downhill. There's one more climb, but once you've made it up the Cliffs of Insanity, you're gonna make it. I actually didn't even know that there was an issue with people getting off course or getting lost until that second aid station at Shingletown Gap. When I got down the Cliffs of Insanity, I was told that I was the third woman, which at that point I should have been, for the woman that I had seen started with, I should have been in fourth, but it turns out the woman who was in second made a wrong turn, unfortunately. So I was in third at that point. And then on the last climb, after Cliffs of Insanity and after running down McGuire Trail, you take one more climb, and I ran into the woman who was in second at that point, who's run this race a bunch of times, and she just, I think the heat was really getting to her. We chatted for a bit, made sure she was okay, and then I kept going, and at that point I was just trying to hold on until the end. Ended up getting second woman. Yeah, and it was really fun. The end is really cool because you can actually just sort of sprint through the finish, and then there's just like a ramp into a pond, and so you can just sort of like throw your pack off, rip your shoes off, and run straight into this pond to cool off at the end. Yeah, so definitely the most technically challenging race that I've ever done, but it was really fun, and I'll probably do it again in the future.
Actually, Miquela, thanks for that clip. I've seen some of the videos of the Rothrock and the Pyre in the past, rather, and looking forward to getting down there and maybe running some of those trails at some point, and going through that finish with a little flip off the dock there. So, nice work, Miquela. It's good to have you in the region, and hopefully some of us get down to Rothrock as well. The Fountainhead Half Marathon and 10K Trail Run in Fairfax Station, Virginia ran. Wasn't able to dig into the results there. The Seghahunda Trail Marathon in Vale of Three Falls, a 5K, 10K, 15K in Portageville, New York, put on by the crew up in Rochester with Fleet Feet Rochester. Also a good classic event in New York. Runs in a pretty area of Letchworth. And I am still hoping to get a clip here from Miranda Betances, if I pronounce your last name right. It looks like you have a solid history there. Great performances at Seghahunda. Just waiting for that clip to come in, and it may not come in time. If it's late, I'll plug it next week. But come on, Miranda. Holding my breath here. Come through in that clip.
Hi, my name is Miranda Betances. This past weekend, I ran the Seghahunda Trail Marathon at Letchworth State Park. Just want to talk a little bit about that. It's a very good, fun run. Challenging for sure, so that's also a perk. This would be my third consecutive year running it, minus 2020, because nobody ran anything. My first year I did it in 2018. Not really trained for it. Before that, I did some local 5Ks. I was going to the gym regularly. I did some Tough Mudders and Spartans, so I was like, yeah, I can do this. Anyways, yeah, it was brutal. It was very hard, painful. It took me, gosh, I forgot, like over 7 hours because I hiked most of it and it was still painful. It was definitely a challenge. So the next year I had a few more friends doing it. So I was like, okay, yeah, I'll give it another go. So in 2019, I trained pretty good, I would say. I managed to pull off first female to cross the finish line, which is amazing, I think. So again, yeah, I'm like, I'll try it again and see what I can do this year, I should say, this past weekend. And I was a little more prepared again. I, know the trail a little better, been out there a few times because it's a fun trail to run. And I pulled off being the top female runner again. So obviously I feel good about that. But the trail itself, so it's a good challenge. Like I said, it's a good challenge, a lot of fun. It's, again, Letchworth State Park. What is there? I think like over 3,000 feet elevation. A lot of history to that trail I'm not too familiar with, but the Seghahunda Run Marathon is only a portion of the park, and there's so many other trails that I honestly am not too familiar with yet, but in a few weeks I will become a little more familiar as I'm going to attempt the Many on the Jenny, which is a 40-miler there on the river, the Genesee River. Part of that run is also the same trail as Seghahunda, but only part of it. So as of now, Seghahunda is my furthest, longest run of 26.3 miles. I did try a road marathon after that, but the trails, if you're a trail runner, I don't know. They're more enjoyable. They're more challenging too, which makes it fun. The Seghahunda Marathon is actually a long weekend thing. So Saturday is the marathon, and then Sunday they do the Valley of the Three Falls, which is a 5K, 10K, and a 15K, I believe. I've never done those, but a lot of people might do just Saturday, the marathon, or just Sunday. And there's a few who do the whole weekend, Seghahunda 72. I give them a lot of credit. That it's got to be challenging, super, after running the marathon, going back the next day and running a 5K, 10K, and 15K. So good for all of those runners also. As of now, yeah, like I said, for me, I've only been running a handful of years, so I obviously enjoy it. I'd recommend it to people. It's good for you. It's fun, especially that trail. Lots of trails out locally, but that's one of the good ones. And for me, yeah, I think I'm just going to see. I don't know if I'll come back next year. I say every year I'm not going to, because, I push myself so hard, and it's obviously makes it more challenging on myself, but obviously I keep coming back to it. It's a good time. I have a lot of friends who do it every year too, so that's fun, seeing people out on the trails that you know. The camaraderie, even the people you don't know, it's great. A lot of people really love this trail, and seeing the same people and seeing the results and all that. So yeah, again, I'll be doing the Many on the Jenny there in a few weeks. Hope to just survive that one. I'm not looking for a top finish or anything like that, and go from there. Obviously, I would like to stick with the running. I'm not getting any younger. I want to try to stay healthy, so that helps. So yeah, that's what I want to say, I guess, about Seghahunda and running and all that. Take care.
But I'll also have the results link plugged. So May events with the weekend ahead. The last weekend of May here, as I mentioned, I'm putting on the Cayuga Trails 50s and Lucifer's Crossing. There'll be the Capitol Backyard Ultra Last Person Standing running in Lorton, Virginia. I think they've got a pretty stellar field going there. They may have had it historically as well, but I think it's a really strong field this year. The Cowbone Trail Run, Sharpsburg, Maryland, 6 hour, 12 hours, 24 hour. The Frosttown Trail Festival in Naples, New York, 10K and 25K. The Charlie Horse Half Marathon, a good classic PA event, one of the oldest trail events, if I'm remembering right, in our region. I think it is. 13.1 miles will run this weekend. The Run Rag in Berlin, Connecticut, Last Person Standing, also I think is running this weekend. Yeah, so that's been the quick run through of what's been shaking in the Northeast Trail world. I am going to close out this evening with a clip from Jack Kuenzle on his FKT effort from a week ago, doing it over one of the most beautiful and technical routes in our region, which is the Devil's Path. Jack, great job again. Trails Collective crew, I will catch you next weekend. Hope you all have a great weekend. And Jack, take us out with the Devil's Path. See ya!
Hey, what's up, Ian? Jack Kuenzle here, talking about my supported FKT on the Devil's Path. So first, why the Devil's Path? I'm kind of more interested in that technical mountain running kind of stuff up in the Northeast. I was originally thinking about Pemi or Prezi during this window, but there's still just too much snow up there. So I flexed and kind of went with the Devil's Path. So if you're not familiar with the Devil's Path, it's in the Catskills. It essentially traverses 6 mountains. It's about 23, 24 miles and like between 8,000 and 9,000 feet of gain. I chose to do it supported. I recently wrote an article on Ultra Running Magazine about ethics and FKTs, and then I went and did a route that had only ever been raced unsupported. I went and did it supported, so fairly hypocritical there. But really, my motivation doing that supported was I looked at Jordan Fields, went and set the FKT on the Pemi, and his effort was technically classified as supported, and then likewise with Aaron Newell on the Great Range Traverse. So I kind of felt that supported was the way things were going as far as Northeast Mountain FKTs, and I figured I would just get ahead of the curve on the Devil's Path and do it that way. But that's not really accurate. Their efforts really weren't supported in a conventional sense. There's a really good discussion on my Strava activity that kind of talks about this with a lot of the top mountain athletes, at least on the male side, weighing in on it. The biggest problem for me going unsupported on the route is I wasn't able to make it. I live down in Virginia. I can't go up there, in the days immediately prior to the effort and kind of scout out those water sources. I had never been on the route except for 3 weeks prior. I went up and I did a scouting trip, what essentially amounted to a little bit more than an out and back over the course of 2 days. But I took note of water sources when I did that. But when I went up for my attempt, most of those water sources were gone, were dry. And the ones that were flowing, I mean, there was no correlation between the ones that were flowing and the ones that were dry during my effort. Versus when I scouted it with like the flow rate and everything. Like you had streams that were flowing really well when I scouted it that were completely dry, and vice versa. So I kind of would have been screwed if I had gone unsupported on it, just given my level of scouting prior. So in terms of support, I met my crew 4 times along the route, about between the first and the second mountains, so between Indian Head and Twin, and then between the third and the fourth, between Sugarloaf and Plateau, then between the fourth and the fifth, between Plateau and Hunter, and then between the fifth and the sixth, Hunter and Westkill. As far as pacing, I came out pretty hot. About 50 minutes in, I was about 7 minutes under Joshua's time. In the end, I'm not sure what it was, about 22, 21 minutes under his unsupported time. So I was really just maintaining and just slightly gaining my lead throughout, especially given, I imagine Joshua going unsupported was probably having to stop at streams later on. So really I came out too hot. And looking back at my splits, I think some of the uphills could have gone a little bit faster. What was really interesting was Joshua and I almost had the same time on all the downhill segments, but it was really only the uphill segments where we were different. And I think on an effort when it's that steep and that technical, like I think, yes, it is possible to run faster down that terrain, but over an effort of that length, running any faster down the terrain, you're just going to destroy your legs. That's my personal opinion. So anybody looking to do this in the future, I think really it's all the gains are on the uphill. Anything else? I guess beyond that, I'm still not sure where to weigh in on this, unsupported or supported. I almost feel like the route should be have the official FKT be unsupported, still be Joshua's time, but I'm not exactly sure. I could kind of see it either way. As far as someone racing it in the future, again, I could see it either way, doing it supported or unsupported. And if anybody has any questions, they're more than willing to I'm more than willing to answer their questions if anybody has any, if they want to reach out and want any beta on the route or anything else. I guess the last point would be on doing it in late May. There were no leaves on the trees on the kind of the upper elevation section, so the sun was really hot up there, and I could really feel it. It was much warmer than I kind of thought it would be. And there was a fair amount of mud on the course. I don't know how much that dries over the course of the season, but that was another minor factor. But yeah, that's pretty much it.